The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. On this Monday, July 8th, I hope everybody had a fantastic long weekend. Was it long? Yeah, 4th of July weekend. Hope you had a fantastic long weekend and ready for another week of productivity and of Yaron Brook shows, because we're going to be on hopefully every day this week. All right. Somebody asked about the members only show that will be on Sunday, coming Sunday. That is the 14th. That is it. Still looking for topics. If anybody wants to propose a topic, propose away. I'm looking for a topic for the July 14th members only show, and there are more and more members. There's a ton of members now, so yeah. All right, let's see. Let's just jump in. I mean, it's been a busy week for elections, right? We've got these elections all over Europe and Iran. The Iranian election it was yesterday, or the day before yesterday, or Friday, whatever. It was this weekend, and then Biden is still in the race. He's still claiming that he is going to run, but the number of Democrats speaking out against him, running against him as the candidate, and encouraging him to leave is only increasing. More and more speculation about who will replace him and what the mechanism will be. A lot of infighting within the Democratic Party about how to bring that about, whether through some kind of mini primaries, an open convention, or some have proposed smoke-filled room. Either way, it's going to be fun to watch, but let's see who can convince Biden to give up. Biden did do an interview last week with Stephanopoulos, something like that. A very friendly interview. And now we know that the main problem he has is he stays up too late. He needs to make his bedtime earlier. He's shifting bedtime to 8 p.m. We talked about this on Friday. Anyway, pathetic. So there we are. That is the American election to be determined. In the meantime, we had the second round, final round of the elections in France, and it was a shocker primarily to, it was a shocker to the French. The French voted in ways that are completely unexpected in a sense, or unexpected by most of the polling and most of everybody else. But as soon as the exit polls came out, it was obvious. If you remember, there was a lot of panic about Marine Le Pen winning this. The National Rally would maybe even have a majority. They'd have 50% of parliament, and they would form the next government. And there was panic not just in France, but all over Europe about this potential, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen in a big way. That is, Le Pen actually only received 143 seats, which is well below the 280 something that you need for a majority, and it was actually the third most achieved by any political party. The Leftist Alliance, which was an alliance of 4 different left-wing political parties, from kind of what you'd call moderate left all the way to nutty left, won the most seats in the parliament, 182. Macron got 168 seats, and Le Pen only got 143 seats. Now, that's still like double what she had before, so it's still a huge increase in terms of for Le Pen. We'll get to that in a minute. But it was very disappointing, given they expected double. They literally got 50% of the seats that they expected. And the reason for this is quite evident. That is, what happened was that in the French election, the first round, you can have as many candidates you want. They run, and then the top three, there might be some minimal requirement. Basically, the top three then go on to the next round. And then the winner of that round goes to parliament. That is, they don't need 50%. It's just the top three. What happened was, in every district or in 200 districts, where Le Pen's candidate had a significant chance of winning, and there was a leftist and a Macron candidate, one of the two did not run. So basically, the opposition, Macron and the left, coalesced around a strategy that made it one-on-one against Le Pen. And the reality is that one-on-one against Le Pen, in most places, even in France, Le Pen's political party loses. That is, she wins when the new right vote is split. But when it's united, the anti-right vote, she loses. So, for example, let's say in one district, there was a leftist and a Macron candidate running against one of Le Pen's candidate. And let's say the Macron candidate, who's a centrist, center-left, center-right, kind of center. Let's say the Macron candidate withdrew, leaving just the leftist and the Le Pen. What happened then is all the Macron supporters strategically were asked to vote for the leftist, even though they are not leftist. And you can see the same might have happened if the leftist candidate had withdrawn. Then the left called for its voters to vote for the Macron candidate in order to unseat or in order to prevent the Le Pen candidate from winning. So what you had here was basically a coalition between Macron and the left in order to stop Le Pen, and it worked. What is interesting is, if you think about the British election, the Labour Party won an overwhelming majority of the seats in Parliament with only 34% of the vote. Macron, her political party, got 37% of the vote, but only 143 seats in Parliament. Whereas the left, the far left, got 12% or 11% less than the far right. 12% less than the far right. But they won 182 seats, 40 seats more. Now I know Andrew Traeger is going to come on and say, you're giving us too much detail. Stop giving us so much detail. Maybe skipping the segment, knowing that I'll give you tons of detail. Anyway, Le Pen got more votes, fewer seats, because of the way the parliamentary system works in France. The left got significantly fewer votes than Le Pen and got 40 more seats. Macron got even less than the left, and he got more than the right and less than the left, so he got in the middle. Anyway, what you have right now in France is a completely split, divided parliament. A lot of people are calling foul because the left and Macron got together to go after the right, but that's how politics works. So that is, I don't know why you would call it foul. MAGA is pretty upset. They wanted Le Pen to win, obviously. Just to give you a sense, Marie Le Pen's party got over 10 million votes. They got over 10 million votes. The Socialist Communists got 7 million votes. Macron got 6.7 million votes. And yet Macron and the Socialist Communists got more seats each than Le Pen did. And that's because of the way the parliamentary system works. And people complain about the difference between the popular vote and the what do you call it? The college in America, you can win the popular vote but lose the presidency. Here, you can overwhelmingly win the popular vote and still lose parliament, and that's what we have. So we have a very, very divided. We have a very, very divided French parliament. It's not clear how it governs. It's not clear what happens from here. While this was incredibly disappointing for the far right, for Marie Le Pen, for all of those, the reality is that they have come a long way. In 2007, Le Pen's political party got less than 0.1% of the vote for parliament. In 2012, 5 years later, they got 4%. In 2017, they got 9%. In 2022, they got 17%, 2 years ago. And over the last 2 years, they have more than doubled the support they have within France. They now have 37% of Frenchmen voted for Marie Le Pen's National Rally political party. So while they were incredibly disappointed, and a lot of that disappointment has to do with expectations set up by the polls that basically looked at the national support, 37%, and extrapolated that into seats, and it looks like they were going to sweep. The reality is it doesn't work that way. It never does. And they underperformed their expectations, and they are pretty crushed. They're pretty crushed by that. It's going to be interesting what happens to Le Pen moving forward, right? At this rate, when the presidential elections come around, she will dominate. We'll talk about the left in a minute, but she will dominate. She is, particularly if the French economy continues to stagnate, particularly if concerns about the Islamic immigration and the lack of assimilation and the violence in the Islamic neighborhoods continues, then she will just continue to gain votes. She will continue to gain votes if that is the case. But we will see. We will see. Not clear. So, by far, the far right in France is the most popular political party in France. 37% of the vote versus 20, what did I say, 23, 24, I closed that window already, by the far left. The strategy of the left and Macron to deny them seats in the parliament worked, and the National Front will have to, or Alliance, or whatever they call themselves, will have to rethink how they enter parliamentary politics next time to try to translate the popular vote into a legislative vote. So what happens now in the French parliament? Oh, before we do that, let's talk about the left for a minute. Yesterday, or during the day, as the vote was happening, store owners all over Paris kind of reinforced their windows. They put up wood and all kinds of reinforcement, because the sense was that the right was going to win, and that the left was going to riot, and there would be a lot of destruction, and there would be a lot of property damage as a consequence of the left rioting, because the far left in France is violent, and it's a combination of Antifa and Muslims, and the fear was that they were going to create a lot of damage. What happened was the far right lost. That is, the far left actually won. And they still rioted. It doesn't matter. The principle with the far left is, no matter what the outcome is, we riot. We break windows. we loot stores, we burn stuff down, we riot because that's what we do. We're leftist. We learned that with BLM. We just go riot no matter who wins. It's just our mode of celebrating, and it's our mode of objecting. It's our mode of existence, violences. So the far left rioted yesterday in Paris. In addition, of course, the leftists took this as a big mandate, for their agenda, which obviously it is not, right? Because they did not get a lot of the votes. They got under 25% of the votes. But Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is the head of one of the four factions within the other thing about the left is it's four different political parties that united in order to get these seats in parliament. No one of those four factions are particularly powerful or particularly strong. They have 182 seats, but they don't have a lot of political power as a consequence. And Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is getting all the press and he's the most vocal, he actually ran for president last election and didn't do well. Jean-Luc Mélenchon is now taking a victory tour around. He is promoting himself as the victorious. His party, called Unconquered France, is a far left-wing party. It's a party that hates Macron, thinks Macron is too much of a free marketer, too much of a capitalist. He rejects supporting Ukraine, is demanding that France force Ukraine and Russia into some kind of peace compromise, which means Ukraine giving up significant territory. He is a hater of Israel, an explicit supporter of Hamas. Mélenchon is a really, really, really bad guy, and is, again, one of the four factions. Another faction, the socialist faction, is actually led by the ex-president of France, Hollande, even though they're called the socialists, they're actually the more moderate leftists. They're not the far crazy left. When Hollande was president of France not that long ago, it wasn't like France went all nationalizing everything. He governed very much from the center while he was president. So, I mean, the center is pretty bad, particularly in France, which is already way to the left. But it was a coalition of more traditional center-left parties with wacky, crazy left-wing parties. There are also a spattering of very small political parties that won. Some crazy leftists, some people who thought Le Pen and her political party were too moderate on the right, so some crazy rightists as well. So you do have a wide array of small political parties that maybe go one seat or so in there as well. Also, the traditional conservative political party, Charles de Gaulle's political party in France, had a very poor showing, but they're in there as well, right? They're in there as well as maybe the fourth largest political party, but by a big distance from the other three main blocks of party. The leftists are a pretty crazy anti-Semites. I mean, this is the challenge you had in France, is both the far right and the far left for Jews are unbelievably anti-Semitic. I think anybody who cared about anti-Semitism could only vote for Macron. There was really nowhere else to hide. The Paris chief rabbi yesterday, or once the election results were announced, said, "It is clear today that there's no future for Jews in France. I tell anyone who is young to go to Israel or a more secure country." So basically, you've got the two largest political parties, or not the two largest, but almost the two largest political parties in France, both share an element of anti-Semitism. The left in France is also dominated by Muslims. So you're going to see Islamists voting for the far left because the Islamists are allied with them. As the French philosopher Bernard-Henri Lévy wrote, the left is once again kidnapped by the infamous Mélenchon, divisive language, hate of the Republic on the lips. Around him right now are some incarnations of the new anti-Semitism. A chilling moment. Stain continues to fight against these people. And journalist Johan Taib, Melchon's victory is a terrible signal of impunity sent to an anti-Jewish Islamo-fascist, sent to the anti-Jewish Islamo-fascist. In other words, this is a great victory for the Islamo-fascist. You're seeing the left, the far left, draw swastikas in Paris. So, you know, Jews, I interviewed yesterday on my show in Hebrew, I interviewed a member of parliament from Israel, Sharon Heskel. She's one of the few classical liberals in the Israeli parliament. And I interviewed her yesterday, and she was excellent. She was excellent. She, you know, basically everything to do with how to deal with Iraq, how to deal with Gaza, and how to deal with Hezbollah and all of that. We were completely aligned. She was really, really good. Her criticism of Bibi was excellent. And in addition, what else? In addition, she told the story of anti-Semitic attacks in Paris by Muslims. And she says, since October 7th, anti-Semitic attacks in France have gone through the roof. The numbers are just unbelievable. Her grandmother was beaten by an 85-year-old grandmother, or maybe 88. Anyway, in her 80s, late 80s, was beaten by 4 Muslim thugs. She unfortunately lives in an area which is now dominated by these Muslims. Her grandmother was in hospital. She survived, but was in hospital. But this is just a symptom. She is telling French Jews, you cannot stay in France. France is just, it's just not hospitable to Jews. It's not going to be hospitable to Jews. The Muslims, the Islamo-fascists, the Islamists in France are completely out of control. And they are now going to be emboldened by the victory of the left, while the only political party that wants to do anything about the Muslims in France, about the Islamists in France, is the far right, the Marine Le Pen's party. And Marine Le Pen's party has a history, even though they're claiming they've changed and all, but they have a history of being being anti-Semitic. So you can't win right now in France. No matter who wins in the distant future, the Jews in France are really finished. We've already seen significant immigration from France to Israel. Most French Jews have bought at least a place in Israel so they can escape to. I think you're going to see the emptying out of France from its Jewish population. And this is exactly why I have said, continue to say, that I support the existence of Israel as a place for Jews to escape to. So the kind of immigration policy that Israel has, that all Jews can come with basically minimal screening, is the right policy. It is in a Jewish state in that Jews still need a place of self-defense. Where are these Jews going to go to? Germany, London, where the police won't protect the Jewish community from the Islamists. Where exactly are they supposed to go? The only home they have is Israel. Not exactly the safest place in the world, but it is a place with a military that is dedicated to protecting them, to protecting their lives. All right. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So just in terms of what happens in the French parliament, hard to tell. Macron is going to try to form a coalition. He's going to try to he's going to try to cause the left to splinter, take the more moderate elements of the left. He's going to try to get the conservatives on board, maybe a sprinkling of smaller political parties. I don't know that he can pull together enough people, but maybe he can form some kind of minority government that will govern, won't be able to do anything dramatic, won't be able to do anything substantial, but maybe he can form enough of a sizable enough within the parliament to do something. But basically, I think the view is, and I think this is the right view, is that you've got complete dysfunction within government in France, and it is going to be a complete disaster moving forward. And the more it's disastrous, the more the right, the more Marie Le Pen's political party will gain strength. 37% this time, 45% next time. Maybe we're heading towards a 51% day where they just dominate French politics. All right, another election held this weekend was in Iran, where you had two candidates. The one candidate was the candidate of the orthodoxy of the status quo, the candidate of Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader, the candidate of the establishment. Very conservative, very committed to keeping Iran the way it is, very, very hostile to the West, and very, very hostile to young women who want to, I don't know, show a little bit of hair, not even skin, I'm talking about hair. Anyway, he was facing what the press all over the world is calling a, quote, reformer, a more moderate candidate, Mr. Pezeshkian, who advocated in debates for a deal with the West, for a nuclear deal, and for maybe women can show a little bit of hair in public and not be beaten to death. Maybe that is possible. So somewhat more perceived to be less conservative, more moderate perspective, and getting support both internationally and within Iran from the more liberal members of the party. But in the election, it turned out, I think to the surprise and the shock of many observers in the West, that the reformer won. And the reformer won, and more than that, the reformer was, quote, allowed to win. And really the reason the reformer was allowed to win was that it doesn't really matter, right? So in Iran, the system of government is such that the president has very little power. Almost all the power lies with the supreme leader. Don't you want to live in a country that has a supreme leader, not just any leader, a supreme leader, which is Khamenei. He has all the power. He has all the cards. He pulls all the levers. He could have declared the more conservative candidate the winner. But, you know, it's challenging right now to be Khamenei. He's 85 years old. The Iranian population does not like him. He is very unpopular. Generally, the Islamic Republic is unliked. Not only do the Iranians oppose the authoritarian nature of the regime, not only do they oppose the strict Islamist interpretation of Sharia law that is imposed on them, but they're also in real economic malaise. The economy has done poorly. It's done poorly now for years, really decades. The Iranians are fed up. They travel enough They see enough what's going on around the world that they know there's an alternative. So Iranians are fed up. They want change. The candidates presented to run for president, the Supreme Leader with his council, right, can filter out candidates that are unacceptable. The candidates that were deemed acceptable by the regime to run, nobody in Iran really liked, so that turnout was very, very low for both rounds of the election. There's a first round and then two candidates run in a second round. And in the second round, even though it was a conservative versus a so-called reformer, very few people came out, less than 50%, and they voted overwhelmingly for the reformer. So Khamenei is unpopular. He's 85. He's worried about succession. He wants his son to be the next supreme leader, but that looks bad because didn't the Iranian regime come about in opposition to a monarchy where the rule passed from father to son, and yet that's what they're going to do here. So you know, the Iranian presidential election is tricky and difficult, and the reality is that the regime has to throw the population a bone, and I think here they threw the population a bone by allowing this so-called moderate to be elected. However, this so-called moderate has no power, one. Two, this so-called moderate is only a so-called moderate. He is not a moderate. And let me just say something about the previous point. It's not only that the Supreme Leader has the power. The reality is that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, which is basically the military, they are the preservers of the regime. They're not exactly the military. They're the special forces that protect the regime. And they are super conservative. They are not sympathetic to any kind of reforms. So basically, the new president has no power base. The parliament, which is very conservative, is against him. The Supreme Leader is against him. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard is against him. Every power center in the Iranian regime is against him. Now, on top of that, he's not really a reformer, right? So, yes, he wants to cut a deal. But everybody wants to cut a deal, right? He basically wants the sanctions lifted. But one of the first things he did, maybe the first thing he did, was send a message to Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah in Lebanon. And he writes, "Greetings and many thanks. I have received your valuable and gracious message following my election as president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran has always supported the resistance of the people in the region against the illegitimate Zionist regime. Supporting the resistance is rooted in the fundamental policies of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the ideals of the late Imam Khomeini, and the guidance of the Supreme Leader, and will continue with strength. I'm confident that the resistance movement in the region will not allow this regime to continue its warmongering," this is the Zionist, "warmongering and criminal policies against the oppressed people of Palestine and other nations in the region. I'm grateful for your sincere prayers for me, and I ask Almighty God for your increased honor and success, and for the happiness and progress of the people of Lebanon." Da, 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 da. So now, I mean, nothing's going to change. They're not going to withdraw all the Iranian-backed militias. They're not going to suspend support for Hamas and Hezbollah. They're not going to stop sending missiles to the Houthis to block trade in the Red Sea. Nothing is going to change. So yes, the press is going to have their... He's a moderate. The Iranians elected a moderate day, but it's meaningless. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change one iota of what's going on in Iran. And a moderate in Iran is an Islamic, fanatic, fascist in any other place, in any other location, in any other context. So nothing has changed for the better. And to the extent that electing a, quote, reformer fools anybody, then that means it's a move for the worse. My sympathies are with the Iranian people who have to tolerate this barbarity, continue to tolerate this barbarity. All right, a few other news stories. I guess the first is one we've talked about before. We'll probably talk about again. It's I think a big deal for the U.S. economy and a big deal for future. It also is a big deal in terms of central planning, American industrial planning. In the CHIP Act, a huge amount of monies were invested in subsidizing the building of chip manufacturing plants in the United States, in particular plants that could produce and deliver the most sophisticated chips in the world, ones that are only made today by TSMC. A small, tiny number of them also made in South Korea, but none basically are made in the United States. And the idea was to subsidize both TSMC to open up a plant in the United States, but also subsidize Samsung to open up a plant here, and Intel and other U.S. chip manufacturers to open plants in the United States where they could manufacture these advanced chips. And a lot of money has been spent as part of the CHIP Act in order to do this. $39 billion have been given as grants, and then $11 billion for research and development, and other money has been given with guaranteed loans, and a huge amount of money has been spent by the United States government on trying to boost this technology. And this is, of course, bipartisan. Democrats love it, Republicans love it. This is the United States asserting its manufacturing muscle. Anyway, the challenge now is who's going to work at these plants. There seems to be a massive shortage of labor. So the government also has a program called Workforce Partner Alliance. It will utilize $5 billion that was allocated to a new National Semiconductor Technology Center. More alphabet agencies. This is the NSTC, National Semiconductor Technology Center, plans to distribute grants ranging from $500,000 to $2 million to up to 10 workforce development projects to try to develop the workforce. Right now, they're estimating that by, this is the Semiconductor Industry Association is estimating, that by 2030, there'll be a shortage of 67,000 workers in the U.S. semiconductor industry. 67,000, right? Not a small number. Now, this is on the optimistic side. The independent estimates by independent groups estimate that the shortage is probably going to be closer to 90,000 jobs. And some estimates, so 90,000 jobs, right? The whole workforce is going to expand from 345,000 to 460,000. So that's, that's the 90,000 jobs, right? So basically, all the workforce needed for this expansion is missing. They don't know where they're going to get the people. They haven't been trained. The American education system does not produce the right kind of people that are going to be easy to train for these kind of jobs. Of course, there is a solution. It's a fairly easy solution. It's a fairly solution that could be put into place fairly quickly and have very, very fast results. And that is to increase immigration, let's say in particular, of semiconductor jobs. But that, of course, is not on the table. Certainly wouldn't be on the table if Trump gets elected, but it's not on the table. It's not something anybody wants to consider. It's not something that our politicians are willing to even talk about. None of the articles that I read that talk about this massive labor shortage, even considering immigration as a solution, because it's just not acceptable in the world in which we live, which is pretty pathetic. Pretty pathetic. Let's see. Oh, wrong article. What am I doing? Yes. One of the companies, Global Foundries, which is the third largest chip maker globally, it does not make the most advanced chips. It makes the less advanced chips, ones that, General Motors and Lockheed Martin uses. And they also face a lot of competition with the Chinese, because the Chinese are pretty good at making these less advanced chips. They are looking for hundreds of employees. I mean, they hire thousands annually, and they are struggling. They are struggling. There's just not enough Americans trained to take these jobs. There are not enough Americans with the skills, with the interest, even though these are relatively high-paying jobs. Yeah, I mean, yep. All right. So yes, the government will try to subsidize this and try to promote this, but the reality is that probably without immigration, you're just not going to get this solved. You're not going to get this done. And all of these ambitions, all of these plans for the United States to become this dominant player in advanced chip manufacturing go up in smoke if you don't have the people to actually work the facilities. All right, we have talked in the past about Bukele. Bukele is the president of El Salvador. He's done a few radical things. One of them is he made Bitcoin a legal tender in El Salvador. And he has also jailed tens of thousands of men, primarily men, I think. Anybody basically with gang tattoos is being jailed. So tens of thousands of alleged gang members. Trials are being done in large groups, and he's built these massive jails in which to hold them. The benefits of this, of course, are that El Salvador went from literally the deadliest place on planet Earth, that were more crimes per capita than any place on the planet, to as safe as most American cities. So a dramatic decline in violence in El Salvador. I don't know about shoplifting, but murder rates have just plummeted. Unfortunately, the economy has not really picked up. In spite of the Bitcoin stuff, in spite of everything else, the economy is struggling. It's going to grow less than 2% this year, according to estimates. El Salvador owes a lot of money to foreigners. Bukele was reelected by a majority of something like 83%. He calls himself the cool dictator. He's a cool guy, Bitcoin, and he realizes how dictatorial his policies has been. He's got all kinds of special powers given to him by Parliament. It's how he jailed all those people. But in a speech on Friday, Bukele threatened to use the same tactics on wholesalers and distributors of goods, business people, who he blamed for a recent steep rise in the prices of food items and other basic goods. So he has bought into Elizabeth Warren's and the Biden administration's claim that inflation is caused by greedflation, they call it. And as a consequence, he is now threatening to use the same tactics he used on the gangs, now on business leaders. To quote Bukele, "I am going to issue a call, like we did to the gangs at the start of 2019, Bukele said. We told them either stop killing people or don't complain about what happens afterwards. We know what happened afterwards. They all got jailed. Thousands of them, whether How many of those thousands, tens of thousands are actually gang members? Maybe 90%, but what about the 10% who are not, who got rounded up with the rest? So be it. Crime has gone down. So he said, we told them, either stop killing people or don't complain about what happens afterwards. Well, I'm going to issue a message to the importers, distributors, and food wholesalers. Stop abusing the people of El Salvador, or don't complain about what happens afterwards. He said, we're not playing around. I expect the prices to come down by tomorrow, or there are going to be problems. So this is the thing. While you could argue that what Bukele did with the gangs was necessary, once you give dictators that kind of power, once you give authoritarian thugs that kind of power, doesn't matter if they're left or right, once you give thugs, by the way, Bukele is greatly admired by MAGA, greatly admired around the world by the populist movement. Once they get that kind of power, they're going to use it. They're going to use it against peace-loving citizens. They're going to use it against business. They're going to use it against everybody, and they're going to take more and more and more power onto themselves. I mean, he's literally threatening importers, distributors, and food wholesalers with violence. Now, Milei supposedly likes him, but that's a problem with Milei. It's a problem with Milei if he really does like him. I can't imagine Milei ever doing something like this. But even liking somebody who does something like this is problematic. Also, if you saw the photos of where Bukele made this announcement, it was, he was sitting at this table all alone, and there was these rows of officials and flags, and it was very authoritarian looking. It looked like, okay, this guy really is a little dictator. He really is. So, it's unfortunate. I think really unfortunate, because it would have been nice if Bukele on economic issues was more like Milei, but it really does seem like he's not. Also, remember, Bukele has been president since 2019. The economy in Salvador has not done well. So he's not, from an economic liberty perspective, which I know many of you don't care about, but from an economic liberty perspective, he has not done a lot of good. He has not done positive things. Not done positive things. So, and as a consequence, the economy struggles. So we will keep an eye on Bukele, keep an eye on what happens over there. All right, quick update on crime in America. This will go opposite of what I've said in the past, as with regard to at least one city, Chicago, which had seen a dramatic decline in murder rates in the first half of this year. So a significant decline in murder rates from last year, but even more significant declines from the peak of murder in 2021. So this would be the third year of declining murder rates. Saw a significant spike over the 4th of July weekend. 4th of July weekend, for some reason, is a weekend in which the gangs in Chicago take out their guns and go out and shoot people. It's the start of the summer murder season. Start of the summer murder season in Chicago. So over the weekend, 4th of July weekend, 4-day weekend, I guess, 100 people were shot. 17 were killed. I mean, it's like a war zone in Chicago. I mean, God, you got to get out of Chicago on this weekend. I mean, last year was not as bad. Only 73 people were shot, and there were only 11 fatalities. Chicago sometimes pointed out, Chicago residents referred to 4th of July as Assassination Day. And they're not assassinating the dictators. They're assassinating the people in their own neighborhoods. 4th of July weekend violence in Chicago this year marks around a 27% increase in shootings over last year. So you see, when crime increases, when murder rates increase somewhere at a point, I tell you about it. But the reality is the trend is still down. I think even with this 27% for this weekend over last year, it's still totally down for the year. Just gives you a sense of murder rates. So Chicago, God, that is just pathetic. And it's mostly in the same neighborhood. Sadly, it's almost all of this is black on black violence. It's almost all gang and drug related. It is just truly horrific. And a lot of this you should and could blame on the teachers union, on the quality of government education in Chicago, on you know, and just the state of education over the last 20 years in the Chicago, in the poor areas of Chicago. Mayor after mayor after mayor, teachers union after teachers union after teachers union have completely and utterly failed the minority students of Chicago, and have basically left nothing, you know, left them with no future. And when kids are left with no future, with incapable of knowing anything because they haven't been given the tools or the knowledge or anything, they revert to the only thing they know, which is violence. And this is a direct consequence of the teachers unions and the leadership, the Chicago leadership, mayors, city councils, school boards, which, in spite of all of this, in spite of its you know, unequivocal failure, they keep voting the same bastards in year after year after year. Just horrific. I feel bad for the people of Chicago. All right. Whoops, why did that go there? That's weird. Okay, final couple of stories. First, elevators. A story about elevators. So I use elevators a lot, about how elevators are regulated and what would happen if you didn't regulate elevators. I often talk about that in my Morality of Capitalism talk as an example, you know, the little diploma on the elevator. And today there is a extensive article in, of all places, the New York Times, about elevator regulations in the United States as compared to Europe. It turns out that Europe has more elevators in buildings than the United States. In America, it is super common for apartment buildings with 3, 4, 5 stories not to have elevators, which is not true in Europe. Now, Europe have crappy elevators, small, cheap elevators. But it's better to have a small, cheap, crappy elevator than no elevators at all, as anybody who has to climb 3, 4 stories will tell you. And the question this reporter had is, why? Why does the United States have so many fewer elevators? And his conclusion is that, and this is in the New York Times, that because of regulations, which are far in excess in the United States than they are in Europe, far greater in the United States than in Europe, as a consequence of those regulations, elevators in the United States are over-engineered, bespoke, handcrafted, and expensive. And they're basically all because of regulation. Our costs are about 3 to 5 times more. It costs 3 to 5 times more to build an elevator in the United States than it costs in Europe. Indeed, according to the argument, a lot of buildings don't get built in the United States because they are way too expensive to build. So one of the reasons we have a housing shortage in the U.S. is because of the cost. And part of the costs are driven by these unbelievably expensive elevators that have to do with crazy regulations. In case after case after case, elevators are driving up cost of construction to the point where some buildings don't get built. To quote from the articles, for example, here's an example. I mean, it's also another, we'll get to that. Okay, architects, this is from the article. Architects have dreamed of modular construction for decades, where entire rooms are built in factories and then shipped on flatbed trucks to sites for lower cost and greater precision. But we can't even put elevators together in factories in America because the elevator unions contract forbids even basic forms of pre-assembly and prefabrication that have become standard in elevators in the rest of the world. The union and manufacturers bicker over which holes can be drilled in a factory and which must be drilled or even re-drilled on site. Manufacturers even let elevators and escalator mechanics take some components apart and put them back together on site to preserve work for union members, since it's easier than making separate, less assembled versions just for the United States. So even though we think of Europe as being unions and worker-centric and all this, unions in the United States are far worse. They're far more irrational. They're far more destructive than even the unions in Europe. So even though the unions in Europe have maybe a little bit more power than American unions, for whatever reasons, they are much more aligned with businesses. In the United States, unions are unbelievably destructive, particularly in construction. At every level, we don't have enough, for example, we don't have enough workers in the elevator space. There's not enough people to build the elevators. And of course, our immigration policy is not going to bring in elevator people because they won't score enough, and they don't have advanced degrees. So we don't have enough elevator workers in the United States because of restrictions on immigration. The result is, according to Josh Barrow, small apartment buildings that would have elevators in Europe are built only with stairs in the United States, or aren't built at all, since our building codes don't impose similar cost premiums for townhouses and detached homes. So might as well build a home instead of a multifamily building because of this. So crazy regulations, insane unions, and the deals that they have, and again, why are prices of housing keep going up and up and up, in crazy ways? Because of things like this. To quote the article again, American building codes and federal law may dictate how large an elevator must be, but they often have little to say about whether one is required at all for apartments. So why build it? Why put the elevator in? But they require big elevators. In Europe, they don't have that requirement. So people build small elevators that are cheap, but at least you have an elevator. He goes on, beyond the elevator itself, you'll find a Byzantine mess of absurdities and contradictions behind the U.S. construction industry's slowness, inefficiency, and expense. For example, Americans cannot use the latest heat pumps, a critical tool for fighting climate change by electrifying heating system, due to the same sorts of barriers imposed by U.S. regulators. Instead, Americans rely on obsolete heat pumps that don't have a market abroad, only in America. You can only build them for America. And plumbing codes in America require an entire network of ventilation piping that has been deemed largely unnecessary in much, again, of the rest of the world. So one of the many reasons why housing is so expensive in the United States is because we can't build multifamily, and we can't build multifamily because the regulations in this country are just insane on construction, on zoning, on not in my backyard. But not in my backyard is just one element. It's just one element. You've got to also tackle the absurdity of regulations going on. All right, let's end with a positive story. This is a couple of months old, but I don't think we talked about this. This is from an article in, Medical Press. A baby girl born deaf has now received gene therapy and can hear without any aids for the first time in her life. With gene therapy, right? She's 11 months old. She's the first patient treatment in a global gene therapy trial, and the results are just mind-blowing. This girl was completely deaf. She had a rare genetic condition, auditory neuropathy it's called, caused by a disruption of nerve impulses traveling from the inner ear to the brain. Within 4 weeks of having the gene therapy infusion to her right ear, Oprah responded to sound from that ear. And since then, her doctors have noticed continuous improvements. At 24 weeks, they confirmed that she had close to normal hearing levels for soft sounds, such as whispers, in her treated ear. Now she's 18 months old. She can respond to her parents' voices and can communicate words such as dada and bye-bye. It's mind-blowing. It's awesome. It's amazing. It's a ode to modern technology, to gene therapy, to what is being done by our biotech companies. It's just amazing and exciting to see. So, and we're going to see more of this, and for more conditions and for more diseases. Now, it is true that those, and there are people, who believe that, being born deaf is a gift. Those people are gravely disappointed. But they're sick. They are sick. There are people like that, though. All right, let's turn to the Super Chat. I will remind you, this is a listener-supported show. It cannot exist without your support. There are a number of ways you can support the show. You can support the show by, if you're listening live right now, by using the Super Chat on YouTube. You can do a sticker. You can ask a question. Either way is fine with me, but please consider doing that. It is one significant way in which this show gets funded. You can also support the show with a monthly contribution. Monthly contribution on Patreon or on Subscribestar. I haven't said Subscribestar in a long time, but my account there is still open. You can still use it if you insist. I prefer Patreon. I also like PayPal, which is yaronbrookshow.com/membership. There will also be, hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll be launching a new website, which is easier to navigate and easier to use. But yes, please consider using Patreon and PayPal to support the show. You can also sponsor a particular show on a particular topic. That costs $1,000 for the show. You get to decide what the topic are, what questions I answered, what issues I cover, and just let me know. You can email me at yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. Also, if you have a product, or service, or website, or something that you would like me to advertise on the show, you can also pay for sponsorship for that. Let me know. Send me an email, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, in order to do that. yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. Let's see. I also want to remind you, the Ayn Rand Institute is eagerly looking for students for the Ayn Rand University, where you can study objectivism, the application of objectivism. You can study it at your own pace, your own schedule. There's so many now different ways in which to engage with the Ayn Rand University, it's called. You can get much more information about the Ayn Rand University at aynrand.org/start here. And of course, Alex Epstein is also a sponsor of the show. alexepstein.substack.com is where you can sign up to receive his unbelievably informative newsletter, what do you call it, a blog, where you get his talking points. Alex is the most insightful person on planet Earth when it comes to issues of energy, issues of climate change, issues of nuclear power, or so-called alternatives, and include in that fossil fuels. So sign up. You definitely want to learn from Alex, really, and benefit from his wisdom with regard to these issues. All right, in terms of, in terms of stickers, thank you, Nottingham. I saw other stickers here. Let's see. John, I know early on. Mary Aline, $20. Really, thank you for that, John. Did 10 early on. Who else is here? I don't know if this is going to go. Oh, Mary Eileen did another 20 and 20. Thank you, Mary Eileen. Really appreciate it. And Yep, won't go. Yeah, there's John. Yes. And Gene Ventura. Thank you all, guys, for that. And let's jump in with the questions. And please consider doing stickers, $5 stickers. You do a bunch of $5 stickers. We'll be way ahead of the game in terms of where we need to be as a target for our target for the show. All right, Michael says mixed economies don't have much of a history of collapsing. We had Nazi Germany, Italy, and Spain. Everyone else has not collapsed, and those three countries have reverted back from authoritarian to mixed systems. Well, I mean, you could argue that you've had mixed systems in Latin America that have collapsed, so certainly there have been mixed systems over there. You could even argue that the elements of that mixture exist in China, and China's become more authoritarian. It's moved away from kind of the mixture and towards more authoritarian. But that's true. The mixed economy has been more stable than one would expect, and people do resist its transition to authoritarianism, at least in the West, right? Western Europe, even Eastern Europe now, post-communism, and in the United States, and maybe parts of Asia. We'll see what happens there. But it's true. The mixed economies seem to be more stable than what one expects. But of course, history doesn't measure things really in terms of decades. We've only had mixed economies really since World War II. We had some mixed economies before that, but mostly since World War II. That's 70, 80 years. That's a blimp in history. That's nothing. And it certainly does seem like we're entering a period of great instability when it comes to mixed economies. We're seeing more and more pressures, both from the far left and far right within the mixed economies, right? So I'm not sure if you can extrapolate from the last 70 years into the next 70 years and say they've been stable so far, so they'll be stable in the future. I think Leonard Peikoff, in both Ominous Parallels and in Dim Hypothesis, makes a great case for their instability. Ayn Rand made a great case for their instability, and that ultimately they gravitate towards one or the other. And since we know pretty clearly that at least over the last 20, 25 years, they have not been gravitating towards greater freedom, then they are gravitating towards greater authoritarianism. We see that in the United States, and we're seeing that in Europe. So, I just warn you not to extrapolate from something that has happened for 70 years into something that will always happen. Beware of such extrapolations. Liam says, do people in most socialistic countries see less of a need for manners? They are more cynical and surly. They operate from a philosophy which preaches life is a meaningful game, so why be polite? Well, I mean, I think that socialism breeds distrust. Indeed, I think a mixed economy, this is the essence of a mixed economy, which is what Ayn Rand talks about. The essence of a mixed economy is gains that you make are often at my expense. And therefore, I resent your gains. I resent your successes. I resent your achievements. So it breeds resentment. And the more socialist a mixed economy is, the more it's tilted towards socialism, the more it is now gang warfare, the more it is anarchist when it comes to economics. My group versus your group, who can pull the political strings better, who can manipulate the system to his advantage better. It's all about that. It's all about that. And the consequence of that is resentment and hatred, and the fact is that a knowledge that people make what they make not because of their abilities, but because of pull, because of the context they have, because of force that they can use through their particular gang versus your gang. Ayn Rand has great descriptions of this in her writings, both in Atlas Shrugged, but also in her nonfiction, of how a mixed economy always reverts to gang warfare. Gang warfare is all against all, and it breeds cynicism, lack of politeness. It breeds hostility, and that's what you see. James, for people to become objectivists in today's world requires a rare heroic character. We think it came easy to us, but we're really all heroes of truth-seeking consistency and valuing life on this earth. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that's absolutely right. I think it's very difficult to become objectivist in this world. It takes a certain level of honesty and willingness to stand up against one's neighbors, one's family members, stand up against the Scots of the world, stand up against pretty much everybody out there, you know, whether they, even those who pretend to be on your side. So it is hard. It is hard. And the people who make it are the real truth seekers, are the people who really care about the truth, not about being popular, not being on the you know, the side that, quote, wins, but being on the side of truth and of justice. And that's rare and unique. So you should all congratulate yourselves. Not all of you, but some of you should congratulate yourselves for being part of that. Jay says, why did communism catch on more than fascism after World War II? Half the planet was under some sort of communist regimes. Only in a few countries did intellectuals gravitate more towards fascism than communism. Why is it? Because communism is more Christian. I mean, it's really simple. Communism is the heir to Christianity when it comes to morality. It is a consistent application of the altruistic philosophy. It's a consistent application of the kind of equality of man before God. All men are equal before God, but equal not just in rights or not in rights, but equal in terms of outcome, the necessity for that. Egalitarianism is basically a spin-off of communism, and that is the basic premise of communism. So, and it's a basic premise of all these regimes. Whereas Nazism is a different form of altruism. Nazis require two forms of sacrifice. One, sacrifice of your own people for the cause of the state, and the cause of their race. But then it explicitly requires the sacrifice of others to you. So it's a very non-egalitarian ideology. It also holds that you in significant ways better than everybody else. And I think it's less Christian. It's still grounded in altruism, and ultimately you can root that in Christianity, but it's just less kind of soft, friendly Christian ideology. The left is far more Christian in that sense, in a sense of taking these ideas and taking them to the egalitarian extreme than the right has been. And the world was offended by the lack of equal treatment, if you will. This idea of equality has become very, very important, and equality before the law in the positive sense and equality of outcome in the negative sense. It's why woke is so popular. It's because it wraps itself in the banner of equality, of treating people fairly, of treating people the same. Whereas fascism and Nazism are explicitly anti treating people the same. They're explicitly, even before the law, they're explicitly about some people being better, inherently better than others, and therefore treated better than others. It's harkening back to, an era where there were aristocrats and kings and people superior. Now, it's true that it's in manifestation of the communism. You don't get equality, but the ideology is an ideology of equality. And that's what makes it appealing to a world trained on Christian altruism. And it's, by the way, why the right cannot fight the welfare state, because the welfare state is driven by altruism, and nobody can fight nobody can fight the welfare state because nobody wants to, nobody can, nobody has the tools to fight altruism. Mary Eileen, how big a role do unions play in anti-immigration mindset? Do unions lobby for laws that keep immigrants out of working? Unions make me think of fat men with cigars and plumber butts and the divine right of stagnation. Absolutely. I mean, they are the manifestation of the divine right of stagnation. Yes, unions have a huge role in anti-immigration. People assume the Democrats are pro-immigration and Republicans are anti-immigration. That is just not the case. It never has been the case. When George Bush, one of the few good things he tried to do was he tried to have comprehensive immigration reform that would have dramatically increased legal migration, and legal migration meaning migrants who can work in the United States. And he managed to get some Republican support, and he managed to get some Democrat support. But in the end, the unions killed it. The unions basically told the Democrats they cannot vote for it. So it was unions who killed the one attempt. And my guess is you're never going to get immigration reform because the unions don't want more immigrants who will work. They have no problem with immigrants who take welfare, but they do not want immigrants to compete with them, with their nice, cushy union jobs. So, and I think now that the Republican Party has become the party of the unions, the party that is going after the unions, that is cultivating the unions, that is supposedly pro-unions. Donald Trump has made a big deal about how pro-unions he is. I think you're gonna that just reinforces the anti-immigration stance of the Republican Party. So absolutely, unions are a huge force in the anti-immigration agenda that we have today. All right, let me remind everybody, we're still short for our second hour goal. So please consider doing a super chat or a sticker. 120 people watching right now. $1, $2, $5 sticker just to show support, value for value. The trader principle. Remember the trader principle? Jump in. Clark, when do power issues come from in one's psychology? How do they fester? I really don't know. I mean, it has to be something probably with low self-esteem and the need to create a pseudo self-esteem by controlling others. Something like that. But that's a great question to ask one of our psychologists when we have them on. Bree says, I just passed 1,000 subscribers and 4,500 views on YouTube. Good for you. 45,000. Sorry, 45,000. 450,000 views on YouTube. That is amazing. Congratulations to Bree. And thank you for sharing that with us and for the support. Liam, why does the GOP think fascism is the way to go instead of melee direction? Were they always fascist, and is there time to strike? Why? Well, because the American people, that's what the American people are. We get the politicians we deserve. So it's not like, so we're getting who we deserve. The reason has to do with the fact that the American people don't want melee. The American people don't want freedom. They don't want free markets. They don't want unregulated markets. They want control. They want somebody else to have control. They want to be told what to do. They want central planning. They don't trust the markets anymore. They used to. They don't trust markets anymore. And this is a consequence of our intellectuals and our politicians advocating for industrial policy, for the mixed economy, for central planning, for industrial policy, for the welfare state, not challenging it. And that is true both on the left and on the right. That is true on both sides, right? So the voters have internalized all that. They've accepted the unions, they've accepted the socialism, they've accepted the statism, and that's what they want, and what the GOP has discovered over the last, Donald Trump, the brilliant marketer. Donald Trump, when he ran for president with the Republican Party, figured out that where the voters were not where the voters were with Reagan, where the voters were was not about government is the problem, not the solution. Give me smaller government, shrink government. That's not what voters cared about. Voters want security. Voters want to be taken care of. Voters want jobs to come back from China. Voters are afraid and are angry. Voters hate immigrants and hate the Chinese. The entire country on pretty much every issue has become more statist. So what you get is a group of voters who are left-wing, all of them. The entire country is left-wing on economic policy. They love Bernie Sanders. And right-wing on social policy. They hate trans, they hate immigrants, they hate Chinese, they hate gays. They just want to sit on the porch, and they all share the divine right of stagnation. They wanted just nothing to change, which is a big part of what drives all of this. And so what you get is you get a new GOP. And Trump got it before everybody else got it. He got that what is really the winning strategy is to be Bernie Sanders on economics, basically. And to be, what's his name? Huckabee on social issues. You remember Huckabee, the Christian right? And that combination is a winning combination, and that's where the GOP is today. And the voters have switched. GOP used to be suburban. Now it's not. GOP used to be educated people voted for the GOP, uneducated people voted for the left. Flipped. Now you've got so the GOP has gone after working class, uneducated people who live either in the inner cities or in rural America. And the suburbs, they've lost the suburbs. So, and they've lost educated people. So you've got this real flip. And Donald Trump recognized it. It's why he won in 2016. And it's why he'll probably win now. He gets it. He gets it. He gets how corrupt the country really is. He doesn't think in those terms, but that's what he does. All right, Jennifer, quote, celebrate the moment as it turns into one more. Another chance at victory, another chance to score. One little victory, the greatest that you can be. One little victory. Again, Neil Peart. Peart. I think I'm pronouncing it right for a change. Neil Peart. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Whoops. Michael. For the guy who got arrested for yelling, raise your hand if you're a Zionist, get off the train, isn't that a form of ethnic intimidation and a call for action against protected speech? No, that's definitely protected speech. Raise your hand if you're a Zionist, get off the train. Did he say otherwise, I'm going to punch you, I'm going to throw you off? Did he literally go up in his face and intimidate him? As long as that's all he said, then that's protected speech. If he intimidated, then it's not the speech that is offensive, it's the intimidation. So, no. You've got to protect the right of the Nazi to yell anti-Semitic things. James Taylor, intellectually, has much changed in the last 100 years. Since the progressive movement took over all the universities, they have stayed in charge as a monolith. Well, they're much more in charge today than they were back then. There was more diversity of opinion in universities then than there is now. Also, the progressive movement has changed. They're far nuttier, crazier, more egalitarian now than they were back then. They've gone from being mainstream socialist to woke identitarians, racists, today. So the left has gotten a lot worse over the last 100 years, and its dominance has gotten a lot more dramatic, if you will, a lot more substantial. Today, if you're an old left, like 50, 60, 70 years ago, you're considered way right-wing on American campuses, right? But you're still left. It's just not in comparison to the insanity of the modern leftists. Not your average algorithm. What is the evolutionary advantage of music? Why do we react so positively to it? How do these vibrations in the air facilitate survival? The bottom line is we don't really know. We don't really know. We know it does, because the reality is that what music does is it provides you a direct link to your emotions. It stimulates the emotions directly without any kind of conceptual intervention. It is doing something to replicate something going on inside our own consciousness. It facilitates survival in that it facilitates joy, it facilitates enjoyment, it facilitates, just a positive, fulfilling emotional experiences, and that is pro-survival. So it's not like evolution designed our brain to enjoy music. Our brain evolved in a particular way, and as part of that, it enjoys music. There was no music out there for evolution to go towards until there has to be first a human brain before there's any music. So what it is it's a way in which we have discovered to elicit directly emotional responses that is incredibly gratifying and pleasing and emotionally satisfying. And in that sense, you want to reinforce it and support it because it just brings a lot of happiness, a lot of joy to one's life, and a lot of visibility into one's own emotional states, into one's own into one's own psychology. I think one's own values. All right, Hopper Campbell. Do you just slay your demons, dissect them, and find out what they have been feeding on? Oh, sorry, I misread that. Do not just slay your demons. Dissect them and find out what they have been feeding on. Yeah, basically therapy. Whether it's self-therapy or with the help of a therapist, therapy is a good thing. Figure out what moves you. Michael, how is France still a first world country with all its emotionalism and communism? Well, they're not communist. They have a really good, I think, better than the U.S. educational system. Really good is an exaggeration. They have a decent educational system. They have very, very fertile land. So they're still an economic powerhouse. They have a lot of revenue from tourism, because they have amazing food, and they have amazing history, and they have amazing beaches, and they have amazing other stuff. And there's still enough entrepreneurship there to facilitate progress. And it turns out they regulate elevators less than we do. And for whatever reason, 2046 points out, and I think he's right, they invested heavily in nuclear power, maybe because of de Gaulle, decades ago, because they wanted to be independent of Europe and independent of the United States and independent of the Middle East. And they invested heavily in nuclear power so they have cheap energy. So the combination of a lot of different good decisions and partially good decisions, just imagine how amazing France could be if they weren't so nutty. Not your average algorithm. Is an amputee who puts on a prosthetic limb when they leave the house second-handed. They fear the stares and judgments of others for not, what? For not being like everyone else. No, of course not. They put on the prosthetic limb because it's much easier for them to function, but it's also true that the stares and the judgment of others is inconvenient. What's the point? What's the point of doing it? But the reality is that the prosthetic, whatever, also helps them in many ways, particularly today's prosthetics, which are incredible. There is now a prosthetic that you can connect to your leg, I think below the knee or above the knee, where it is connected to your nerve system, and it will actually allow you to walk like a normal human being. But imagine if you don't have a leg and you have to limp around on one leg, and now you have prosthetic and you can actually walk. It's a massive difference. So no, there's nothing second-handed about it. Scott, if altruisms claim perfection, what? If altruists claim perfection is impossible, and objectivism says it's possible, wouldn't it be useful to have some concrete examples? Yeah, I mean, that's what art is for. That's exactly what art is for. Art is for the projection of moral ideals. The Christians have it, and their perfect model for that is their perfection, which none of us can attain, is Jesus, and they have an aesthetic model. So do we. Atlas Shrugged is filled with examples, from Dagny to Reardon to, of course, the perfection of John Galt. Howard Rourke in The Fountainhead is a great example. So art is exactly for that. In real life, yeah, it would be great to have examples. Find them. That's your job in your life, and even better, do it yourself. But what am I going to say? Here's Joe. I think Joe is a perfect human being. All of you should emulate Joe. I mean, that's absurd. That's ridiculous. That would should we worship Joe? What do we do with Joe? Should we say prayers to Joe? I mean, what do we do with Joe now? I mean, I know a Joe who's, I think, perfect. Does that help you, Scott? What the hell? So it's just, this is why, your job in life is not to go find a perfect human being and match him. Your job in life is to try to pursue perfection in your own life. That's it. Try to pursue perfection in your own life. That's your job. And your models, you've got amazing models in the novels. Michael, do people in Biden's inner circle want him to run again because they like maintaining their position of status and power? They could care less about his health. I mean, that's one theory about why some of them have let it get this far, why they let it progress as much as they have. But it really is hard to tell. I have no particular insight into his inner circle, but that certainly is one possible explanation for the insanity that the people around him are committing right now. William Hyman, thank you. Really appreciate the sticker. We're chipping away at that goal. We've got a little bit still to go. So what do we have to go? It's $100 and something. So if anybody wants to, that'd be great. $161. So, a few $20 questions, or maybe one of the whales can come in with $100 or $50 to get us to help us get to where we need to be. Liam, Will there be a lot fewer jerks and unfriendly people in the objectivist world? Yes, a lot fewer. Not your average algorithm. Did Ayn Rand expect her affair with Nathaniel Brandon would come out after she died, or she thought no one would ever know, or she didn't care either way? I think she didn't care either way. I mean, I think she didn't want it to come out while she was alive because she didn't have to want to bother with all the questions that would be associated with it. She didn't want to deal with it in terms of what other people would say or comment or whatever. But I don't think she cared. It's why she wrote it in great detail in her diary, all about the affair and what was going on and the psychology of it and the back and forth and everything. And she didn't burn the diary. The diary's still around. So it was obvious it would come out. Actual corruption is a minor issue. Most of what people call corruption is a result of collectivism, which, having no basis in reality, offers no coherent standard by which to make decisions. Well, I mean, but there is corruption. There's a ton of it. And some of it's just, collectivism, but some of it is, might people will vote for you if you add this to your agenda? Might people will vote for you if you promise to give us this when you attain power? And that is everywhere. That is the nature of the mixed economy. Again, this is the whole point Ayn Rand's making. We divide up into gangs, and those gangs turn into what they call interest groups, or what Ayn Rand called pressure groups. And now you have all these pressure groups trying to manipulate government in their favor, and government does stuff. That's the corruption. That is the nature of corruption. It's not suitcases of cash. That also happens, but more rare. Happens quite a bit, but more rare. But it's much more about buying and selling votes. Favor granting for all kinds of reasons. Kuhn, thank you for providing the daily social political world temperature. Appreciate it. Thanks for the support. Not your average algorithm. Do you prefer soft or hard tofu dishes? Spicy or mild? Soft and spicy. Definitely. Christian Klein, do you watch the Euro? If so, who do you support? I am with the Netherlands. Oh, that's a difficult question. I typically support. I'm not watching it. I don't think any of my service providers because I've gone codeless. Any of my service providers are showing the Euro, so I can't watch it. If anybody knows how to watch it through a standard service, I'd love to watch it. But generally, I like my two favorite teams are England and the Netherlands. And unfortunately, they're playing each other. And between the two, I have to, in the end, go with England. I was supportive of the Netherlands when they had Johan Cruyff. But I'm generally a supporter of England over the Netherlands. And then it's going to be Spain and France. Spain versus France, I have to go with Spain. Spain, England, I'm going to go with England, even though Spanish play a prettier football than the English do. Apollo, I may have asked this before, your opinion on 3D bioprinting. Exciting, stimulating. I mean, I can't wait for them to 3D print a human heart. That's going to happen for transplants. It's amazing. We'll see how the technology advances and if it fulfills its promise. Lucinda, hope you're having a good day, Yaron. Hey, Lucinda, nice to see you here. Thanks for the support. The Godfather, I have an idea for a YB show. You should do a Finance Fridays or something like that to discuss companies that are doing things you find interesting, IPOs, investment strategies. I like that. I'll think about it. I don't follow finance as much as I used to, but that could be a nice way to actually force myself into following it. It would be fun. I've written it down. Apollo Zeus, hand-to-hand combat stuff. What did they teach you in the Israeli army? Nothing. They didn't teach us anything. I mean, everybody thinks we all learn Krav Maga. We don't. Don't tell anybody. I don't know Krav Maga. Only special forces learn Krav Maga. So I didn't learn anything. You're not expected to do hand-to-hand combat in tanks or in military intelligence, so we didn't learn any of it. The Godfather, what are your thoughts on the proposed new Texas Stock Exchange? Do you know details of this, like how it will function or operate? What are the advantages, disadvantages of multi-stock exchanges? There are not many advantages given the regulatory structure in the United States that creates this level playing field between all the exchanges. So regulations make it very difficult for an exchange to stand out from others. Exchanges really only serve the function of listing because the trading can be done on any exchange for any stock. The Texas Stock Exchange promises to be a non-woke exchange, which is an advantage, but I don't know how big of an advantage because I don't think the other exchanges are that woke. And there are quite a few exchanges out there, so there's already competition. They promised that they wouldn't require DEI for companies that list. I guess NASDAQ recently has added a DEI requirement, or did a few years ago, to listing on the NASDAQ. I don't think the NYSE has a DEI requirement, but maybe NYSE has other requirements that are not rational. So, it's possible. Excuse me. It's possible that there is enough corruption of the other exchanges that having one exchange that is really committed to shareholder wealth maximization and to kind of a pro-markets approach to listing will help, because again, on the trading side, they're all the same. The other advantage they might have in trading is they have one of the partners in forming this, is Citadel. Citadel, of course, it does a lot of the market making. A lot of the order fulfillment is done by Citadel, so that could give them an advantage maybe in costs, hard to tell. But they all compete. So they could be a more friendly place to list if you're not woke, but it's hard to tell. It'll be interesting to see. I don't see it as a great business. I don't see it as a great business because the regulations level the playing field so that you can't really do anything interesting. You have to be like everybody else. Okay, Jennifer, last question. Do you think it's possible the first music was people trying to imitate birds? It could be. It could be. I mean, birds make sounds that are generally pleasant to the human ear, so that is quite possible. Yeah, humming, whistling, trying to imitate the birds might have been the first kind of music. I have no idea. There might be other sounds in nature that are pleasant that they might have been trying to mimic. But it is interesting to think about what sounds are pleasant, birds obviously, that would be the case. Interesting. All right. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate the support. Really appreciate all of you. I don't think there's going to be a show tonight. I might change my mind, but there's no interview tonight. We've got interviews for the next 3 weeks. Next week will be Steve Simpson. We'll be talking about Supreme Court cases. He's at the Pacific Legal Foundation, PLF. Used to work at the Ayn Rand Institute, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And we've got, I can't remember who else we've got, but we've got a full month after this. But this Monday, today, nobody. So I've asked a couple of non-objectivists, and they've turned me down, so that's disappointing. I was hoping that this guy who wrote the opening of the Western Mind, the closing of the Western Mind and the reopening of the Western Minds, which I think are brilliant, both of them, both of the books. I wanted to interview him, and he says he doesn't do interviews, and he's not a friend of capitalism, so he doesn't want to come on my show, which is too bad, but his books are great. You should definitely read his books. Although, I don't know, Scott might put you on a blacklist if you read books by somebody who's not pro-capitalism. All right, everybody, I will see you soon. See you tomorrow, 2 o'clock. I hope 2 o'clock. I've got a doctor's appointment. In Puerto Rico, you never know, but I think 2 o'clock will work. Bye, everybody.